Welcome back. Of course, today the big thing is all about the budget and, of course, the VAT bill. We want to understand both the budget and, of course, the taxes in terms of the ways of raising funds for the budget. Today, to talk to us more on that is David Wanyoike, who is a tax expert working for Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young is actually one of the world's leading professional services organizations, helps companies across the globe to identify and capitalize on business opportunities. David Wanyoike, welcome to the Power Breakfast Show. Perhaps just to break the ice, how prominent is Ernst & Young in the market here in Kenya?
Ernst & Young is a global firm that has been in Kenya for almost 100 years now. And we basically provide services ranging from accounting, auditing, advisory services, and tax. Actually, where I am, I've been working for the last several years. And we have made strides in ensuring that the clients in Kenya or the business community in Kenya is able to unlock the potential in the business sector to ensure that they carry out their businesses in a very professional and efficient way to make sure that, they reap the maximum benefits out of the operations that, they are carrying out. Yeah.
Of course, David Wanyoike, you are not new in the world of, budget and taxes. You've written a great deal of articles in relation to budget and taxes. We have seen a total difference when it comes to looking at budget in this country. There was a time we were expecting a budget speech, but right now we're expecting a budget statement. How significant is that change from your own perspective?
From a technical aspect, there's not much difference between a budget statement and a budget speech, because at the end of the day, we are looking at coming up with the estimates, the budget estimates, and looking at how we are going to finance those budget estimates. And looking through the estimates that were presented in the parliament recently, we are not seeing much of the difference between what has been happening in the past. And basically, I was going through the estimates that the Treasury presented to the National Assembly and noted that we still have similar challenges or similar areas or sectors that are being addressed, have been addressed over the time. For instance, when you look at the total budget, which is split into the current expenditure and the developmental expenditure, we are still seeing a lion's share, a big chunk of the money going to the current expenditure, and that has been an issue over the time because, when you spend so much money on the current expenditure, the country or the economy does not get a boost to move to the next level.
Perhaps for the sake of our viewers, you need to explain what is the recurrent and the other expenditure.
Absolutely.
Because the people may not know what is recurrent.
Yeah. Recurrent expenditure are those administrative expenditure. For instance, payment of salaries, payments of allowances, those expenditures that goes straight to consumption by the people involved in executing their roles in those areas. But the development now goes to the core of the economy, whereby the money or the funds are applied in funding projects that have the ability to create employment for our people. For instance, we have been talking about the youth all along and the big unemployment level in Kenya. And for us to address the problem that has been perennial of a long time, we can only, or rather, we should be able to direct most of the funds to the developmental projects to ensure that one thing, we're able to create employment, the other thing, we are able to create a conducive environment whereby even the youth or the women, those are the two categories of people we have been talking about all along, are able to come in and tap or rather execute or rather make use of their potential in the areas where the infrastructure would boost their ability to come up with such projects. So I've talked about the issue of the recurrent and the developmental projects, and unless And going forward, unless we are able to basically try to balance or rather reduce the spending on the recurrent matters or recurrent expenditure, we may get it very tough, going forward to be able to uplift this economy and create, the jobs we really look forward to creating.
You've seen you don't notice any difference. Yeah. I thought that now that the ministries have been reduced from 40 to 18, that therefore that recurrent expenditure will be less because of less ministers or less public servants. Why is that no difference?
What I've noted, and basically maybe going forward things may change, what I've noted is there has been merging of various departments, various ministries, but the same human resource that has been there all along is still there at the moment. But we're hoping that with time, the government is going to come up with some, processes to rationalize or probably get rid of some resource which would make it be able to save on some cost that was going to those recurrent expenditures. But basically, the only area where I was saying I'm not seeing a lot of difference is the way the funds are to be allocated. For instance, I was saying the recurrent expenditure is taking almost more than 60% of the whole budget. That has been the tradition all along. Actually, the funds that go to the development expenditure has always been less than 40% allowed there. So that's one of the items I'm saying I'm not seeing a lot of difference. Then the other thing that is a point for us to get worried about is the key sectors have not been addressed keenly. For instance, we are talking about the growth in the economy by 4.6%. And when you look at the contributors to that growth of the economy, agriculture is key.
And they've reduced 3.5 billion.
Yeah. It contributed to a growth of 17.6, or rather, it's contributed to the growth of 17.6%, and it has received a meager amount of about 38 billion. And we are saying that if we want to grow this economy, because agriculture is a key sector in the country, we need to put most of the resources there. For instance, we should be able to come up with programs that would make agriculture commercial, such that the farmer at the grassroots is able to treat the farming as a business that earns them income, which boosts the standards of living. Apart from probably 2 or 3 ministries whereby, in my opinion, the funds have been allocated in a good manner, all the other sectors, most of the money is going to, administrative, matters. The only, I've identified 2 key sectors whereby the allocation, to me, has the ability to boost the economic growth. For instance, transport and infrastructure. There's an allocation of about 102 billion, and about 80 billion is going to the development. I've also noted under the devolution and planning portfolio, a big chunk is going to the development. And this probably could be attributed to the fact that we need to come up with structures at the county level to make sure that the devolved government takes off strongly. Because, this is the first year we are seeing a budget that will be presented when you have a new system of governance, that is the devolved system. Yeah.
What about education? I found, according to the press reports, education is the biggest allocation, followed by infrastructure, and of course, internal security, Ministry of Internal Affairs, and whatever. But is that education thing is going to not? And the teachers are complaining. In fact, they are saying whatever they asked, they weren't given. Yet they are the biggest allotees. Isn't that contradictory?
True that, yeah. I'm looking at the education sector, and there are several things to note here. And even without going into the key ministry itself, if we start from the TSC, there's a massive allocation to the TSC because, of the number of teachers, that have to be paid at the end of the day. and we are boosting of a very qualified, skilled, human resource. And for us to get such kind of a resource, we need to start from the grassroots, from schools, from the primary, elementary school, and so on and so forth. So a big chunk has gone to TSC. But again, if you go to the education ministry itself, whereby we are talking about education, science and technology, a good portion of allocation has gone there. And this one could have been informed by the fact that there are ambitious programs that we are looking at when it comes to the education sector. For instance, the new administration has been talking about the laptop program for the primary school kids. And, that is likely to take a very big chunk of the funds that are going to the education sector. Again, we need a lot of money to train the teachers who will be taking these kids through the use of the technology. And at the moment, because we had not anticipated that, primary schools would be allocated, or rather would be required to use technology at that level, we need, or rather the government needs to come up with programs to ensure that there are teachers who are qualified, have the skills to guide these kids through, to ensure that at the end of the day, the program whereby the kids are getting laptops does not end at the point of where they get the laptops. We need to see results coming out of this ambitious program. So the other item is about the issue of teachers clamoring for more pay, and because of the numbers, the amounts that are involved in trying to appease or rather improve the working standards of the teachers by paying them well is massive, basically because of the numbers that's involved. And I'm thinking, based on that, that's why we are seeing the funds going to the education sector, rising very highly. But over and above that, I still have an issue with the way the education sector is being looked into. For instance, recently we have seen like all the polytechnics have been converted into universities. Yeah. Now that means for you to get post-secondary education, you have to have performed very well. Or rather, even if you have performed very well, because of the competition that is in the market or in the education, you may not get an opportunity to join a post-secondary school institution. And basically, what we have seen before, we had so many polytechnics. These polytechnics were providing an alternative to those bright students who have not been able to join universities. So I think going forward, and I may not be able to tell whether the allocation in this budget to the education has taken care of that. We need to make sure that to replace the colleges or polytechnics that have been converted to universities, we need to come up with probably colleges that teach the youth, or rather try to give the youth technical skills to ensure that those youth who are not able to join universities can apply their skills, or they can develop their skills through these vocational or technical colleges, and ensure that they are able to even to create employment for themselves. So those are some of the undoing things that have gone through my mind when I looked at through the budgets, or rather the allocations that have been given to education.
Now, just looking at the budget process as a whole, of course, for a very long time, the budget-making process was a preserve of, the Treasury and, of course, politicians. But right now, we've seen the inclusion of, there's public participation. In one of your articles, you say challenges still abound in public-driven budgeting process. And perhaps many people think, there was at least hope. Yes, we were given only one day to participate. But how do we rise above the challenges that we are actually now seeing?
That's a good thing. And I think we're in the right direction. If the plans or the paper or what we have been hearing through the media is to be actualized. And my concern was, yes, the government has come up with an ambitious program whereby the public is involved in the decision making and determining where they want to be. And the only way, as a Kenyan citizen, the only way you'll be able to influence what is happening is by giving your suggestions. And after giving your suggestions, you also need to follow up to know whether they were taken up, and if they were rejected, why were they rejected, so that in future, when you're making the same initiative, you know what to avoid and what to include and how to put it across. Yeah, what I've noted is, yes, the public has been act-free, and I want to put in quotes, involved in the budget making process through public forums, whereby the people or the officials from the treasury would come and consult, probably at county level or the former district levels. And when you give your inputs, that marks the aid. That's my concern. That marks the aid, because after that, you are not able to tell whether your submissions were taken,
what criteria,
and if they were rejected, why were they rejected? So that means unless that issue is addressed, going forward, we'll still be having those challenges. As in, or rather, we'll just be having public participation in the budget making just on paper. And when you look at the output or the final product, there's no element of their participation.
What do you think about Mutava's committee, that the appropriation committee, the one that's now allocating? Yeah. Isn't that a major step towards people-oriented allocations?
That's definitely that's a positive move. It's a positive move, and I think it would be even a better approach if the committee is able to come up with programs to reach out to the ordinary mwananchi down there, and probably at the end of the day, when those submissions are made, or
I suppose it will be happening in the future, because this was the first year. Yeah. I suppose next year they will have the time, because the committees will be there. Yeah. But this time the committees are problem being formed, so that's why they were not able to get time to go to the people. I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. I think the best thing is to start this process immediately. Probably after this budget, when the fiscal year starts in July, it would be important to start the process then, because after one or 2 months after the end of the fiscal year, that's the end of by that is June, the public will take time to synthesize what the treasury or what the government has come up with from the previous budget. And now, based on what has come up, the public will either be happy or unhappy with some of the changes or amendments that have been introduced. And from those amendments, they will be more informed, well-informed on what to expect, or rather.
I suppose next year they will have the time, because the committees will be there. But this time the committees are problem being formed, so that's why they were not able to get time to go to the people. I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. I think the best thing is to start this process immediately. Probably after this budget, when the fiscal year starts in July, it would be important to start the process then, because after one or 2 months after the end of the fiscal year, that's the end of by that is June, the public will take time to synthesize what the treasury or what the government has come up with from the previous budget. And now, based on what has come up, the public will either be happy or unhappy with some of the changes or amendments that have been introduced. And from those amendments, they will be more informed, well-informed on what to expect, or rather what they want to happen in future. And if it starts early enough, maybe 3 months after the reading of the budget, then the public will have the ideas fresh in their mind, because based on those unpopular proposals or amendments that have made, they'll be able to come up with better policies. And if they're taken early enough, then you'll not be complaining that there was not enough time to go through all the submissions and select the best and give reasons why we have not been able to take all the proposals that have been made.
There's supposed to be a deficit according to what the needs and what is going to be collected. I think at 200 billion. And of course, there's this VAT business of trying to tax bread and tax the very poor. What's your view about that?
Basically, it's a tough task for the new National Treasury Secretary. And at the moment, we are basically, or rather the government is basically focusing on raising more funds. what we have been witnessing is over the years, the budget has always been having a deficit. And that deficit has not been working well for the government because it means that we are going to, to be seeing increase in debts. At the moment, I think the debt is about 1.8 trillion. It's about 50% of the annual GDP of the country. It's not a healthy situation for the country. And if this is not well managed, it's gonna, it's going to create economic crisis in future. So, so from that aspect, the Treasury Secretary is going to be focusing more on means of raising revenue. And one of the available alternative is the VAT. Over the past few years, we have been seeing the government trying to come up with reforms in the VAT to ensure that it's harmonized, or rather, it's framed in such a way that it's going to boost the reason of the revenue. And what you'll be seeing, or rather, what I'm expecting to see today, although it may not be a popular action to take, is the secretary trying to reintroduce the VAT Bill 2012, which in a way tries to tax everything, including the essential food items. And we have seen the civil society coming up in arms and saying, no, you cannot touch the essential items because the ordinary mwananchi will not be able to afford the foodstuffs. And I'm seeing a situation whereby, because the secretary is pressured so much by the need to meet the revenue targets, then it's maybe inevitable not to try to tap into the VAT, and this may cause some friction with the ordinary mwananchi. But again, there are also other means through which the Treasury Secretary may try to make use of to raise the revenue. And for instance, early this year, there was an introduction of excise duty on the financial services. And we have seen it being implemented in the telecommunication sector, money transfer services. And although it has been implemented on the telecommunication sector, there's still some challenges when it comes to the other financial sector. For instance, we are aware that the banks went to the court to seek an injunction to the implementation of the amendment. And this one was informed by the fact that there were some challenges, or the amendment was vague in some sort of way, because we noticed some segments of the amendment did not come out clearly. For instance, to say or to define what a financial institution means. Again, they were talking about fees, what fees means, and the banks were relying on that vagueness to seek for an injunction, which was granted to them. I'm sure the secretary has been very keen on these matters, and I'm expecting today the secretary will try to come up with some clarification to ensure that there's no vagueness now. And if he's able to come up with some clarifications to ensure that what constitutes a financial institution is already known, and what constitutes fees charged by financial institutions is clear, then the financial sector institutions will not have an avenue not to charge excise duty based on that vagueness. And we are expecting, if this goes through, then the government will be able to get several billions out of that and boost the revenue targets.
The government created a new Ministry of Mining.
Yeah.
I am assuming that might help. I mean, with the discovery of oil and coals all over the place. Is that going to be of any use? Can that help us if it's done this year?
Definitely, it's going to have an impact, but not an immediate impact. And we know it's a very young ministry that's trying to address the extraction and use of the natural resources we have in Kenya. We may boast that we have resources, although probably many people would not know, but even if they're in small quantities, how we manage them, how we make use of them, comes in handy. And I think that's why the new administration has deemed it fit to come up with an independent ministry to tackle or to address the challenges and tap into the potential of that sector. And or the first step I expect the government to take in this sector is coming up with new regulations, because the past regimes have not focused on the mining sector, basically probably because of lack of know-how, or rather because the economy has been doing fairly well in terms of raising revenue through other means. Probably like in the recent past, we have seen the government doing some privatization of the public institutions. Now that those opportunities are no longer there, or rather they are limited, now the government has to look for alternatives. And I'm thinking the mining sector would come in handy if proper regulations are they are developed and applied, and the government put in place measures to ensure that there's no corruption or wastages in that sector. And again, I think also the issue of the discovery of the oil in Kenya will come into hand. We come in to assist the government meet the revenue targets. Although the impact may not be immediate, but we are expecting to see a lot of transactions going in the exploration of oil sector. And people will continue, whenever you're able to strike a potential well, maybe for the oil, we'll be seeing some transactions, change in ownership and so on and so forth. And the government has come in through the Finance Act 2012, has come in to introduce tax on such transactions. And if they continue happening, they provide a fertile ground for the government to even make more money and breach the deficit, that is glaring at us in the budget.
Yeah, just looking at the whole issue of raising funds to meet the budget, and in relation to the new VAT law, in one of your articles you say the new VAT law is a money machine for the government, and so far the common mwananchi is actually complaining. How do you go on to tax very essential goods like milk and bread? And of course there is this campaign dubbed No Unga Tax. How can the common mwananchi be protected, even as much as the government is trying to raise funds as far as the budget is concerned?
I remember when the VAT Bill 2012 was introduced in the Parliament, the National Assembly, the parliamentarians were up in arms against it because of the introduction of tax on essential items. Although there was a conflict of interest, because the Kenya Revenue Authority has always been of the fact that even if these items are zero rated or exempt from tax, the final mwananchi does not get to benefit, maybe because the players want to maximize on their profits. But again, looking at it from another angle, I think it is prudent for the government to relook at the issue of taxing essential food items, because at the end of the day, that is the thing that mwananchi relies on. As in, we don't want to see a population that's not healthy. And the reason why it's not healthy is because the government is pushing them too much to get something out of them. So I think the best thing to ensure that this bill, the VAT bill, passes in the Parliament is to relook at the taxation of the essential items and either zero-rate them or exempt VAT from them to make them more affordable. And I don't think that would have a big impact, because if you are able to reduce taxes on the essential items, that would mean that we'll have a nation, a healthy nation, that has the energy and passion to work, and probably out of that work, the economy will be able to grow, and the economy and the country as a whole will benefit from that front.
There was a report in the press this morning that according to the agreements in the East African community, some motor vehicle assemblers and other manufacturers may get tax breaks. Are they deserved, those tax breaks?
I think on one side, they may deserve the tax breaks, but again, for the government to think of giving tax breaks to a certain sector of the economy, there's need to do a lot of homework to determine the benefits that will arise out of it. Probably, I'm thinking about a situation whereby probably the government may be thinking of boosting that sector to grow, and in the process, create more employment, and in the process, if it grows, it's able to generate more tax revenue, which would boost, the government to meet its targets. But again, I don't think tax, breaks always work. May not work because, after introducing the tax breaks, we need to come up with, measures to ensure that there's no leakage. There's no leakage going forward because, once you get used to some sort of preferential treatment, you may tend to become complacent, and not do enough to boost the economy. So I think it's a good thing, but something that needs to be monitored, and measures need to be put in place to ensure that in future we don't end up losing revenue because we try to boost a certain sector.
Well, long time ago, when you used to have exchange control, so that the amount of dollar you have is controlled by the government. At that time, we could have more. I don't know. If we have liberalized that so that anybody can have any money they want. That means now what is happening is that when I go in every small market and I see people vendors and those fellows traveling all over selling things, they're selling Chinese junk. There's a lot of Chinese junk being imported in this country. Can we help ourselves by controlling that import so that we don't give our jobs and our foreign exchange to China and other
foreigners
and other foreigners who are bringing luxury cars and the most modern cars that of Europe. They are here. Then we have toothpicks from China. This is ridiculous.
No, I think that is a major concern, and it's very very worrying. Personally, I've been finding it very worrying to myself because over the years we have been seeing the exports shrinking, but the imports are growing. They are growing and
exponentially.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think the government has failed some extent because for the economy to continue to grow or to impact on the common man positively, we need to some sort of try to improve our balance of payments, and this can only get worse because every year the exports are shrinking. And I think the best way to tackle this is, for instance, to commercialize some of the local activities like agriculture to ensure that we have enough production even for export, and we are also able to to ensure that the locals or the Kenyans are able to get the best prices for their production. But again, the issue of controlling what can be done by a foreigner in Kenya is also important because we don't expect foreigners to come in and do those basic things like selling local items allowed.
Oh yeah, true.
The Chinese hawkers.
Yeah, we have youth who are very energetic and who can do similar things. So I think it's an area that that needs to be looked into in a very critical way to ensure that we don't lose opportunities, the very obvious opportunities to foreigners at the expense, of our people.
What about imports? My question is about imports. Why is it that I saw the other day somebody selling chopping board, a wooden chopping board, a piece of wood imported from China? Surely, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, true.
Why can't we control that? Why can't we stop that? Why do we need to import a chopping board from China? We have Mount Kenya forest here. Every carpenter in every village can make a chopping board.
I think our policies sometimes are good, but they're only good on paper sometimes, because like during the last budget, that's last year, the government talked about, you know, boosting irrigation by ensuring that we are able to manufacture irrigation kits locally, and also maybe manufacture things like fertilizer locally. But that was on paper, because basically there were no measures. The government did not come up with measures to boost or encourage the locals to take up those opportunities. You know, maybe in terms of, you know, tax breaks, or, you know, giving them preferential tax treatment. There was nothing to, you know, boost or encourage the locals to come up with such programs, so that, you know, at the end of the day, the local mwananchi is able to get those products at favorable or reduced prices. So I think going forward, the government should come up with programs. If it wants to boost the local mwananchi, they need to come up with programs and give some preferential treatment to encourage the locals to take up those opportunities. Because I'm sure that time the government, no, last year the government was talking about drip irrigation, and those kits to do drip irrigation were supposed to be produced locally, but there was no mechanism was set to ensure that we are able to tap in the skills to develop those kits locally and be able to be, you know, to be used here by our own people. So if the government is able to come up with such spreaded, you know, programs, and be able to, you know, extend the benefits to the people on the ground, then we will see a lot of change. We will not be seeing people importing toothpicks, you know, because we have a lot of trees and you can produce them locally.
Absolutely. Many thanks indeed. We'll have to wind up there. We've been talking to David Wanyoike, who's a tax expert working with Ernst & Young. We'll be right back.